Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I am Adam Weinrib, joined as I am every Wednesday by FanSided MLB insider Robert Murray. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Luis Robert Jr. goes last night in a trade to the Mets, finally, which makes me say, hey, what does Cody Bellinger's market look like? Apparently, that question has been answered for me. Cody Bellinger goes to the New York Yankees, as people have forecasted for quite a while, but has got a little bit hairy in recent weeks and even had the Yankees threatening to move off Bellinger and expect him to go elsewhere not 10 days ago, maybe 12 days ago, that Buster Olney report. Either way, no more speculation there. Mets for Luis Robert Jr., Yankees for Bellinger, and now what is next? Do we still have a New York bidding war ahead of us for a trade target, plus some not so welcoming things about a salary cap and 2027 ball? We will touch on that, but let's talk about player movement first. Robert Murray, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing great. Finally, we have the big guys, for the most part, off the board, and Cody Bellinger goes back to the New York Yankees, as we've long forecasted on this show. May have taken a little bit longer than I suspected. There was a few times throughout the last few weeks that I thought it was on the verge of happening, but it indeed finally happens today on Wednesday. Very exciting for the Yankees, big deal for Bellinger, so I'm anxious to dive into that and much more. But Adam Weinrib, happy hump day. How's it going?
Happy hump day indeed to you. Feeling good. Glad we have a lot to react to and some forward-thinking stuff as well. Plus your questions. Make sure to get them in the comments. We are happy to answer. I already see some names being mentioned, like Framber Valdez, like Eugenio Suárez. We will touch on them. If your question does not get answered today, no better place to join us than the Discord tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern at the All-Star tier. Robert will do a half-hour Q&A. We'll also be back with a show Friday, 3 shows next week. So thanks for dropping by to hang out with the Baseball Insiders. Let's start with the most recent deal. Well, you know what? Actually, let's go in the timeline of events, because it felt as interest was being drummed up, as we couldn't figure out who the Bellinger suitors were. Hey, maybe the Blue Jays hop in here after not getting Kyle Tucker. Maybe the Phillies can scrounge up some money after not getting Bichette. The Mets do get Bichette, but are they done? They've still got an outfield vacancy. You looked at the Mets outfield depth chart last night, and it was Taylor in 2 spots. You had Tyrone Taylor in center and left field. That's obviously not how it was going to play out, but it does speak to the fact that, hey, if you're the big money Mets, you can go ahead and get Cody Bellinger even after giving $40+ million a year to Bichette. And then all of a sudden, Luis Robert Jr., a trade target for the Mets for eons, and someone that the White Sox have been wanting to hold on to at seemingly every turn, finally goes to New York. $20 million plus the $2 million buyout. So big expenditure, especially if you're a Mets team that's over the tax. They absorb all of that. They don't give up all that much. Luis Angel Acuna from a packed infield, plus a Harvard man, a pitcher who I don't think many were aware of before the trade was made. Last night, what was your thought on this? That's all it cost. And how quickly did this come together, even though there were so many breadcrumbs for so many months at so many different deadlines?
No, it took a while for this one to happen. And after what seems like a few years of speculation about a potential Luis Robert Jr. trade, it finally happens late on Tuesday night, where he's being sent to the New York Mets. And I really like the move from the Mets. He is a high floor player. Like there's a lot to work with here with Luis Robert Jr. When he's healthy, he's battled injuries in the past. Like, don't get me wrong. But when he's healthy, he has the ability to be a very good player, offensively, defensively. I know his offensive numbers haven't looked like it in recent years, but still, like, he's shown glimpses of it. And if you can get him healthy, and you wonder how much being in a competitive environment is going to help him out. Because if you look at that White Sox team in recent years, not very competitive. You go to the Mets now, you're in a huge spotlight. You're surrounded in a roster now with Bichette, with Juan Soto, with Marcus Semien. I mean, so many other players here as well. And I really like the move from the Mets perspective. And like, they gave up 2 prospects, and giving up Acuna, like, the White Sox really liked him in this package. As soon as, like, I think he was the key for this one getting done for them. But I like it from the Mets' perspective. The White Sox, clearly they made the right move in picking up the option, because they got some pieces back in return. Obviously, this is not how they envisioned the end of his tenure going with the White Sox by any means. But when they were presented with an offer that they finally felt was worthy of being accepted, they did it. And I want to go back to maybe a few weeks ago. I defended David Stearns in this podcast. I like there was a lot of offseason left at that point. There still is a lot of offseason left. But a lot of people were being critical of his offseason because you looked at it. You saw Pete Alonso. You saw all these other guys, Edwin Diaz. That one, you still can't really like spin that one in a positive light. But there was a purpose behind these moves, and he felt that they needed to make a shift, and he wanted to put his stamp on the team. He did so. It obviously hurt, let go of a lot of long-tenured players there. But now that you add Semien, you add Bo Bichette, Luis Robert Jr., I mean, they added Luis Garcia today too. So, I mean, I don't want to forget to include him. But he has done a really nice job here turning it around. There's still moves that can be made, whether it could be a Freddy Peralta type, who obviously Stearns knows from his time in Milwaukee. There's other moves that can be made here as well. But I want to use this time to defend Stearns. And because he's doing, like, I think he did really good here. So good on him.
A stunning amount of turnover. I mean, it's jarring to look at a Mets roster with no Brandon Nimmo and no Pete Alonso and no Jeff McNeil, and all of a sudden you've got Bo Bichette playing an unfamiliar position. And Marcus Semien's here. A lot of people have forgotten that because of how early in the offseason that took place. Luis Robert Jr. up the middle. I see the comment calling him the opposite of a high floor player, and I hear you. The offensive floor is extremely low, but I think when people say that, they're referring to the fact that the defense, as long as he is healthy, remains elite, remains a difference maker. There's value there. The worst case for Luis Robert Jr. is better than Tyrone Taylor and the upside there. And what he gives you, again, obviously his worst quality has been lack of availability. But if you are the Mets, hey, you still have Taylor, you have farm system Carson Benj, maybe Brett Beatty plays left field, or maybe you package some of those players for a difference maker in the rotation. Either way, the Robert Jr. deal pushed the ball into the Yankees' court as if it wasn't there already. Cody Bellinger finally moves. We heard from John Heyman yesterday that, hey, it's the Yankees and the Mets. We couldn't really imagine the Mets going to that 7-year mark, but you were starting to think, okay, does he prefer 3 chunky years with the Mets or 5 with the Yankees? Or maybe there are some mystery teams in here. Ultimately, 5, $162.5 million for the Yankees. We'd heard about 160 forever, and it becomes 162.5, and it's real front loaded. There's a signing bonus there, $85 million in the first 2 years, and if the worst case scenario happens and the lockout takes away 2027, the opt out moves to after year 3. That then becomes year 2, and it's 3 and 4 instead of 2 and 3. Either way, the next 2 years, critically important for the Yankees and Bellinger and Cole and Judge and Fried and Rodon and all these guys who are aging into the mid-prime and maybe a little bit out of it. It locks in the core for a couple more years at least. The 7-year-esque gets bent on. What do you think this was always inevitable, even before Robert Jr. goes to the Mets and takes them out? Was it in doubt? Were these mystery teams real threats?
I mean, you were part of the show here for the last few months.
Yeah, I can answer this question.
Yeah, this was inevitable. Like, the reports, everything that came with it, like, it's part of the process here. But the Yankees and Cody Bellinger always felt like they were destined to just stay with each other, whether it was 5 years, whether it was 7 years. But it always seemed like if a deal was going to get done, it was going to be at that 5-year level. And it did not come as a surprise whatsoever. I don't think there was ever a moment that I doubted it. There were indeed other teams who were lurking around this for sure. I thought the Mets made a tremendous amount of sense here to me. Obviously getting Luis Robert Jr., I may have impacted things there for sure, but with Steve Cohen and his ability to outspend anybody, you had to worry about them, in my eyes, as a serious threat to steal Bellinger away. I don't know if they were actually interested or not. That's just my own speculation, my own thoughts. But I feel like that's definitely got to be on anybody. That had to be on their minds. The Giants made sense to me, although I never really saw that being the most likely outcome. It was always, to me, going to be the Yankees. It took a lot longer for it to get done than I think any of the sides would have preferred. But getting, 85 million within the first 2 years, it continues a trend here of just these absurdly high dollar amounts for these players on the short-term deals, because you could have the ability to opt out. So you get around 85 million in 2 years for Bellinger. You get that deal for Bo Bichette. Tucker getting 4 for $240 with his opt-outs in year 2 and 3. There is some serious money being thrown around in the first couple of years of the deals here. So that's definitely a trend. I think it's a big reason why the Yankees were able to keep Bellinger, but it always made the most sense. And there was not a moment where, like, I don't think the Yankees ever, like, were worried about him leaving or were operating under the assumption that he was going to leave. I don't know what those reports were. Those didn't pass the smell test for me. But now he's back in the Bronx. They shouldn't be done. I think there's more work to be done. But that was the big one, and they finally got it there.
Yeah, I could read my thesis on how much more work there is to be done, but this certainly makes them better. There were, I guess, some fans out there hoping somebody came in with a Godfather offer to take him off the Yankees' hands. I want to ask those fans, then what exactly did you want them to do if that happened at this point in the offseason? The Yankees and Mets did not exactly go to war here for Bellinger after all. The Yankees said they didn't want to get into a bidding war with the Mets, and, you know, that didn't happen. The bid stayed exactly where it was. But, hey, you never know if that could actually happen for Freddy Peralta, who we've seen connected to the Yankees, the Mets. There was even a rumor today that Jet Williams, Brandon Sproat are being talked about, and Tong was a non-starter. We saw Freddy Peralta connected to the Padres in recent days, the Dodgers. The comments noted that Andrew Friedman said today, no big pitching move, but you never know. Dodgers always have something up their sleeve. They seem to be finishing third on Kyle Tucker until they freaking signed him, so you never know. What do you think about the Yankees and Mets and the field in the potential Peralta chase?
Yeah, I'll start with Tucker here. Like, the Dodgers were always a very real threat here. And my feel at the end of the day was that it came down to either the Dodgers or the Mets, with the Jays being in third there. And the offers that have finally been reported, with Jays with 10 years for $350, and then obviously the other offers there, it would seem to really confirm that. But the Dodgers are always very real in this. And I even wondered aloud too, is the silence with them, and then you have all the other teams where stuff is getting out. Like, you wondered, I don't know. It was interesting in my eyes. But anyways, Freddy Peralta, there is a lot of interest here in Freddy Peralta, and that comes as no surprise here whatsoever. Do I expect him to be traded? Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think, as far as his market, I don't know like an eventual timeline here by any means, but you look at the Brewers' perspective here. Why wouldn't you trade him? You've moved Adames, you've moved Burns, Hader, and you maximize that return. And you can probably do the same here with Peralta. Maybe you can try to get something along the lines of what Burns got. But his $8 million salary here is really what adds to the intrigue here, because any team in baseball can add that salary. An ability to get that number, to me, is like him at that number is just an opportunity that's too good to be true. So whether it's the Dodgers, where, I mean, evidently Friedman put cold water on that, but you could look at the Yankees, the Mets. I mean, all these big market teams, the Giants, the Braves, even small market teams potentially are going to be involved on this, which is only going to drive up the bidding more, which is why I've long anticipated Peralta is probably going to be traded. And yeah, the Brewers tried to squash that thought after they had Brandon Woodruff accept the qualifying offer, and Antanasio and Matt Arnold went on the record with The Athletic about it. But it always felt like a trade was probably going to happen, and I still think that's the case. As far as that report, I don't know. But the Brewers are going to want some high-end talent there. So those names definitely do make sense, but I can't confirm anything along those lines.
Yeah, the Brewers obviously motivated to move Peralta to a certain extent, but they know that this is an uncommon value to have a pitcher like this at this price with only the 1 year of control. They are very clearly valuing him highly. They are not just going to give him away for maybe one established MLB starter or one top prospect and filler. Hey, the pitching market has Peralta leading the charge right now, but in terms of free agents, we do still have one possible $150 million man on the books in Framber Valdez. After Bellinger finally goes, he's probably the free agent most likely to hit that max level. Have you heard anything about his market, as well as maybe some of these other free agent pitchers, Lucas Giolito, Zach Allen, the people lagging behind a little bit? Because that's where the big board is still kind of crowded.
Yeah, and Framber, he definitely stands out among the rest here, and he's extremely established. He had a really strong, I believe it was 8 years in Houston, but it definitely feels like both sides have prepared to move on here. So you can look at him. The team that I think makes the most sense here is the Baltimore Orioles. I've said that, or I thought that most of the offseason here. I was asked about that on MLB Network the other day. And I think the Orioles make a tremendous amount of sense there. And if you end up adding him to that rotation, then to me, you can really look at the Orioles as a serious threat to win that division, but also possibly advancing deep into the postseason here. And like, he's durable, like he's done his thing for sure. Pitches deep into games, so it takes the wear and tear off of the bullpen, which is, I think that would be a good thing for the Orioles there. And obviously Mike Elias knows him from his time in Houston. A lot of that front office does know Framber from their time in Houston. They're going to have the answers to the test on what that incident meant with him crossing up that catcher. I think that has to be on the mind of teams, because that was a pretty big moment for him there. So I still expect him to do very well. He's obviously a tremendously talented pitcher there for sure. But there's also other pitchers here drawing interest. One that I think we should be keeping an eye on here is Zach Littell. He is not getting like the same buzz in publicly that's like a Giolito or a Zach Gallen is getting, but Littell is drawing a good amount of interest here for sure. I expect him to do very well on the market here, and he may not have that big time velocity that a lot of these teams crave, but the guy can flat out pitch, and I expect him to do very, very well here in free agency.
And soak up innings. He's very valuable. Hey, I want to think about Luis Arraez for a little bit, because I cannot comprehend his free agency at all. But a good time to also bring up Eugenio Suárez, who's all over the comments. Luis Arraez with a question mark, Eugenio Suárez with maybe a slightly more faded question mark. What are the markets like for those two players? Probably the most prominent offensive players still on the market.
Yeah, as far as Arraez goes, the last update that I had heard a month-ish ago was that there was around 5 teams involved. You got to imagine there's probably more as of this point. Obviously, offensively, a very talented guy there for sure, but his lack of defensive ability, that kind of is not like, that's not going to be playing into his favor. There was a team that I thought that made the most sense for him in that. Actually, I thought it was a text. It was the Eagles interviewing Matt Nagy for their offensive coordinator job, which nightmare. Oh boy. But anyways, like the team that I thought made the most sense for him was the Texas Rangers, and they kind of threw some cold water on that earlier into the offseason and seemed to imply that it was more likely that they're going to go with their internal options. We'll see if that remains the case. But with him lingering on the market, you always can wonder if he can end up falling into somebody's lap on a better contract value than they had initially expected. So we'll see. But still, from a bat perspective, I think that's a worthy gamble on a short-term contract. What was the other player that we were talking about?
Suárez, and there's some Pirates love in the comments as well. I'm a little confused as to where he's going.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the buzz. Maybe they're interested. That's still something that I have not heard much of on my end. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen by any means. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But as far as my end goes here, I have not heard much there at all. It was interesting, though. I was on foul territory the other day, and Scott Braun mentioned how he connected Suárez to the Red Sox, and people were upset about this. And like, why? Like, Suárez, like last year, if you go back to the trade deadline, he was among the most coveted guys in the market. Everyone wanted Geno Suárez, and obviously the Mariners got him. He did not have a strong end of the season by any means whatsoever. Would he like a redo on it? I'm sure he would. But this is a guy who hit almost 50 homers last year. He was a tremendous, tremendous player. So I would not hesitate whatsoever if I was a team in pursuing Suárez, because I think you're going to make your lineup a lot better. But also the thing you hear from people here in Arizona is his leadership and his ability to control a clubhouse is something that's really important with him. So, I don't get the slander there at all about Suárez, because he's still a very good player.
One last note that I just feel like I have to touch on a depressing note. There was an Evan Drellick piece yesterday dropped, said MLB owners are predictably raging after the Kyle Tucker and then the Bo Bichette contracts, and have been a little even more galvanized over the past couple of days about a salary cap. The Mets and Dodgers, in fact, maybe the only teams that won't stand behind such a proposal, to which I say, Hal Steinbrenner, you're a loser, but that's fine. Did the labor situation somehow get even worse over the past week as far as you can perceive it? We all know it started poorly, but it feels maybe even a little bit worse after Tucker Bichette gave them an excuse.
Yeah, I would say on my end, like, I don't think it changed anything really. Like, maybe like a lockout was always, it felt like destined to happen. But the only question that I've had is whether or not we're going to be missing games. I don't know, but I don't think that changed anything. Those guys got really friendly deals on their end. I think it was a tremendous job by the player representatives in all those cases there. But I still, like, at the end of the season, like, there's gonna be a very difficult negotiation, but I don't think this changed anything because the lockout has just felt kind of inevitable. And the only question that I have is, are we going to miss games? That's been my view of this for months.
Yeah, I view it the same way. And my question is maybe even a little more depressing. Not will we miss games, but how many games will we miss? Anyway, Luis Robert Jr., Cody Bellinger, more free agents still on the board, and potentially Freddy Peralta as well as the next big domino to drop. Hopefully we get some fun under the radar trades as we head towards opening day, spring training, less than a month away. No more big money offensive contracts yet to be signed. No disrespect to the Luis Arraez and Eugenio Suárez of the world. I think we might get some fun trades before all is said and done. You can join us to talk about it, to pre-analyze, to predict, and to wrap up and recap here on the Baseball Insiders. Robert, do you want to come back on Friday and talk about it again?
No, I'm good. But thank you, though.
Right.
Of course I do. That'd be awesome. Let's make it happen, baby.
I'll be there. Robert will be there as well. Thank you for joining us on the Baseball Insiders. If it's your first time, please hit subscribe. Please come back, hit the join button, and join us in our Discord. If you're back again, thanks for making up our audience. We'll see you on Friday.
Thank you, everybody.